Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, January 22nd. Meeting of the Newmarket Planning Board in the auditorium of the Town Hall. If everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we start, we just want to certify there's a quorum here, so if everyone will just go around through the table, your name and position.
Ed Carmichael, Town Council.
Jane Ford, alternate planning board.
Elizabeth Dudley, Planning Board.
Janice Rosa, Planning Board.
Val Shelton, planning board.
Diane Hardy, Town Planner.
Rick McMenamin, Planning Board.
Eric Bodeman, Planning Board.
Very good. Are there any public comments of something that's not on the agenda? No one in the audience. Okay, thank you. I'll close the public comments for non-agenda items. Before we go to review and approval of minutes, I'd like to address a administrative technical issue that I actually uncovered in our meeting minutes. When Eric Bodeman was nominated to fill the term vacated by Justin, Jane had seconded that motion, but yet I had not appointed you to vote on, and therefore I know it's a technicality.
Second.
So what I would like to do, Rick, I think you made the motion to appoint Eric. If you would, I want to redo that motion.
Make a motion to approve Eric Bodeman as a member of the...
To nominate?
Nominate.
Yeah.
Eric Bodeman as a member of the Planning Board to replace Justin Norman.
Okay, and then
Second.
I need someone to second. That would be Ed. Any discussion on the nomination? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I should have picked up on it. And before we go further, Jane, I will appoint you to serve tonight in a voting capacity to fill Adam Schroeder's seat, who's not here. Okay. I should have done that before we voted on this. My apologies. Okay. Review and approval of minutes. The first ones that we will take up is the November 13th. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes of the November 13th, 2012 meeting with corrections if necessary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any corrections? I've got just a couple editorial questions here, or changes. Page 4, line 35, that should read planning board, but should be code enforcement issue.
What line is it?
Here on 35. Cross out and it
This
should
is-
be add code, and then capitalize enforcement. That's a code enforcement issue.
A code.
Enforcement issue. On page 5, line 15, the word wholesale, PVC pipe should be whole, wholesale.
Let's say that. I'm sorry.
On page 15, line 15 on page 5, there is no whole PVC pipe up there.
Right. Oh, okay. Not wholesale. Gotcha. Okay.
On the page 8, the motion on line 2, I believe Eric accepted the application as substantially complete. And on page 18, line 11, that line should read family residential with 3 or more units, and mixed-use development with 3 or greater residential units.
With
3 or greater
or greater.
residential units.
Okay.
And on page 19, line 5, that should read M2 zone, not R2. Correct. And everything else is just other stuff. Those would be my changes.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
November 27th.
Motion to approve the planning board minutes of November 27th with corrections if necessary.
Second.
Roseanne second.
Janice.
Janice second. I'm reading this. Okay. Does anyone have any changes?
A question,
Okay.
was there supposed to be a public comment at that meeting?
No, it was a
No, it was a
workshop.
workshop.
Okay.
And for the record, we're not required to have public comments. We can discuss that later if we want to keep that on or not. Not to digress. Any other comments or questions or changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, December 11th minutes.
Make a motion to approve the December 11th, 2012 planning board meeting minutes with corrections if necessary.
Second.
Okay, any changes or comments on those? Seeing none, I'll call. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And the January 8th ones, did anyone have a chance to review those? It's not on the agenda, so we'll move it to the next agenda. Can we actually deal with it now if it's not on the agenda?
We probably should move it till the next.
Okay, we'll put it on the February agenda. All right. Okay. Very good. Moving to regular business. The first item on the agenda is Acadia Engineers and Constructors, LLC, the Russell Sarbaji Jr., continuation of public hearing for an application for site plan review at 13 Water Street, tax map U3, lot 4, M2 zone. The proposal is for the redevelopment of the property to include two projects. The first is the restoration renovation of historically significant F.E. Lang Blacksmith Building, which is 5,599 square feet. And the second component is the construction of 4 new townhouse units, which would total 5,320 square feet. The applicant is here. Just a couple of things to remind the board. Unless there is a motion to continue the public hearing and that the applicant is also agreeable to do that, we need to take action on this item tonight. So keep that in mind. And then I'm going to have Eric report from the TRC perspective, and then we can have discussion. I'll open it up for public comments as well. Mr. Nichols.
Good evening. I did hand out just a summary. I just wanted to condense the project history, and so I'll go through that real briefly. And then I know there are some comments that need to be addressed. So the project initiatives, essentially we're trying to create a sustainable development of an existing urban site. There's lots of things that we're doing, but our ultimate goal is to have a net zero historic building, which it would be the first in the country, a historic building on the National Register to be a net zero building. So that's our goal. We are working with Department of Historical Resources and the National Parks Service on the design of the existing building, or restoration of the existing building. The project also includes 4 2.5-story residential townhouse units. Variance approvals, we've gotten 3, well actually 2 area variances. One was a revision, a special exception, and a use variance. So those are summarized. Stormwater, there's actually a site plan, color-coded site plan that I handed out just to make it a little bit easier to see how all the stormwater is going to be managed on the site. But we are,
Excuse me. Can we do something about that?
Are you
All we're
interrupting?
doing is listening to that, and hard to listen to him.
Maybe
Maybe
move
you
the
can close
chairs
the-
up.
Mhm.
Move your
Close
chairs
the
a
door,
little
close
closer.
the door.
Ed, could you ask Chris to address that, please?
Well, I think the sound, closing the door isn't gonna do.
No, it's all on the top.
It's coming out of the top.
Well, why don't you turn down the volume?
Or maybe the chairs can come closer.
Still, but it's still, I know I'm here, and I have the same problem as you do.
Okay.
Yeah, just
there you go.
So,
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
raising that point.
Okay. So based on the current design, the impervious area will be reduced from 17,000 square feet to 11,000 square feet. The stormwater treatment area will increase from 2,355 square feet, or 12% of the site, to over 17,000 square feet, or 82% of the site. And 2 rainwater cisterns will supply water for non-potable domestic use and potentially irrigation. The building's been vacant since March of 2008. There have been previous plans for redevelopment prior to our interest in the site. This is really the third site design that we've put together, and it's quite different from where we started. And a lot of that was based on the architectural historic significance of the existing blacksmith shop, and the fact that it is not only eligible as a contributing building to the existing historic district, it's also eligible as a primary building for the register. The site plan approvals process. The revised site plans were submitted on November 13th. There was a TRC meeting, December 6th. Some rounds of comment response log. And there was an extension that we had requested through tonight. And I believe we would need another extension if there's a motion to further extend it from tonight for formal action. Reviews and permits. Conservation Commission did review the site plan, and that was required for an expedited wetland permit submission to DES in October. The Lamprey River Advisory Committee reviewed the plans, provided several comments to DES, and we are addressing those comments as part of the wetland permit application. And DES also reviewed it, and they had several comments, all minor in nature, and those have already been addressed. And a permit will be submitted for the relocation of the sanitary drain system. And we did speak with the state sanitary engineer, and he stated that the permit would essentially be a formality or a notification. Final item, butter coordination. We've been working with both of the primary butters since 2011. Newmarket Community Church, who Skip is representing tonight. As far as we know, there are no current identified issues or concerns with the proposed site plan. And Rivermore Condominium Association, we've been working with. There are some issues that they've raised regarding lighting, access, property transition, and we continue to work with them, try to mitigate any issues or concerns.
Do you have any, before we get, I'll open it up for Eric to report on TRC. Do you have any requests for do you have any written requests for waivers as part of the application?
No.
Okay, so you don't need any waivers from any of our regulations?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Let's hear from Eric, and then we'll open it up, and then I'll open up to the public as well.
Okay, at the TRC meeting, we obviously went through the plans, Underwood was there. There was a lot of discussion about drainage and green space, and the Rivermore Landing Condominium Association was represented. They had some concerns about lighting in their garage that they were working with the developer on. At the end of the day, I think everybody agreed that the site plan was a lot better than what's there. There were some issues that I think still needed to be kind of finalized, details finalized, like parking and handicap accessibility and things like that. But at the end of the day, there was general concurrence that the site plan was just about where it needed to be. And then I just got, for the record, I guess, I received the revised site plans. Sue emailed them out to me on Friday, so I had a chance to look at them yesterday, and I have a few questions. When we get to that point, I guess I'll get into that too. But I think, to summarize, I think the TRC, we were pretty much in agreement that the site plan was pretty good. Rick Malasky had a few questions. Underwood had some questions. I had some questions, and basically everything was being worked through.
Diane?
Just a couple of things I wanted to add is I did receive some comments back from Underwood engineers, and there are 2 areas where they're looking for some additional information and had some questions concerning the drainage and the cistern that's proposed as part of the stormwater management plan. And I'm hopeful that, we can work out the details of those. I don't think tonight's the forum to do that, but if we had another technical review committee, I think we can reach some conclusion on those. I also spoke with Rick Malasky, and of course, as you know, in addition to being our Public Works Director, he's our fire chief, and he had some concerns about the proximity of the garage for some of the new units that are being proposed in relation to the driveway. Of course, the driveway in back of Joyce, the old Joyce's Kitchen property, if you will, is really a means of access for the fire department in the event that there's an emergency in the Rivermore property. So Rick had some concerns about perhaps the way this is configured. There might be illegal parking in that area, which would obstruct the fire lane. So he wants to make sure that it's clearly shown on the plan where the fire lane is, and that there's proper signing so that people don't park within that fire lane because of the potential problem it would cause for the fire department to get in and there in the event of emergency. So Rick wanted to work through that problem with the applicant, and again, the technical review committee meeting would be a proper venue for that. And I think Eric did a nice job in reviewing his concerns. I have one question for Mr. Nichols, if I may ask. There was a question that came up earlier, Tim, about the property boundaries, and you were waiting on resolution of the right-of-way issue with the town and with the property owners. Can you give us an update on that, please?
I'll tell you what I know.
Okay.
I did reach out to Steve Fournier in, I believe, early December. Let me back up. I've been in contact with Bill Doucette, and the agreement that we had with the council was that there would be a cost sharing to complete that right-of-way removal. And as of early December, Bill Doucette, the survey company, had not received a purchase order or notification to proceed with the work from the town. So I could not authorize him to do our share of the work. It all has to be done as one activity, one event. So the last conversation that I had with Steve was that he was going to look into it and get back to me. That was several weeks ago.
Okay. I will mention that to him when I see him tomorrow, just so we can get that process moving again.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I have.
Yes.
At the TRC, we did talk about, I think Elizabeth had sent out an email about the drainage, water running down Water Street. And we did talk about that and with Rick Malasky, and we came to a consensus that there was nothing that this project could do to stop the water from getting down Water Street. They are doing a significant improvement on their site to eliminate current stormwater from basically running right into the river, but there was nothing feasible for them to do along Water Street.
Can I ask
Yeah.
you some questions about that?
Yes.
Okay. So it seems to me, well,
Is the issue relative to off-site improvements that we're requesting the applicant to do?
it's
When we talk
connected
about
to
Water
the
Street?
project.
Okay, because they're adding water to Water Street, adding stormwater runoff?
Well, potentially they could be, but I think that it's an opportunity. I feel very strongly about preserving the water quality of the Lamprey River, and I think that this, and I wanted clarification on some of these drawings in terms of the pervious pavers, et cetera. So I think Eric's the one for me to ask these questions of. So, because he was on.
I'm game.
So it
Okay.
looks like some pervious pavers are proposed to
Yes.
actually be put in Water Street. So that's one thing we're doing, no? Or am I reading? this
Along
thing?
Water Street, not really in Water Street, but in the entrance.
Right before the boat ramp?
Those are existing.
No, those are existing.
Those are
That's the
Okay,
existing thing.
okay,
Yeah.
so and those, well, okay, it doesn't, there's some inaccuracy then in the plan, but in terms of distinguishing between proposed and existing, looks like you have, I mean, they're very similar graphics. Looks like one's going in one direction and the other is going in the other direction. Maybe they're just rotated differently, so it's difficult for me to tell what is proposed and what is existing.
Yeah, Elizabeth,
In the
recommendation, look at the one page that I guess was left in front of you tonight. It's a colored sheet, which really delineates between proposed. You can see
Okay.
the
so-
greenish color is the
Okay, so there are no
proposed pervious
new-
pavers.
Okay, so I was hoping that there would be more pervious pavers added to Water Street. And I think, I'm surprised that there aren't solutions. For example, I know this is the town, I'm not asking that the developer do this entirely, but for me, it's an important issue because that this area is going to be significantly more trafficked because of this development. So there is going to be more traffic up and down Water Street and more cars that are going to be in proximity to the river. So there's going to be more outwash of petroleum products that just happen whenever cars are there. And I feel that there are things that can be done to Water Street to change where the water flows. I don't believe that the water needs to flow into the Lamprey. I mean, you can channel water away into the park that is there, for example. And Diane knows I've given sketch in the past for moving water from Water Street into a rain garden. I just think in the conservation park there, it should be more than just symbolic. It should actually help to clean the water of the Lamprey. I mean,
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in the TRC disagreed with the concept. The issue was that we don't believe it's this developer's responsibility to address Water Street.
And I understand, but I think it's an opportunity to work with the developer since there's going to be work in this area. That I feel strongly about as a taxpayer. I would like my taxes to go to something that I value once in a while. So preserving the integrity of the river is important to me. So that said, I wanted to, you were mentioning that we would go over in detail some of how the stormwater amelioration products that are here work. So I have some more questions about those. Okay, so are there, one of the things that I was suggesting was that curb cuts be made to go into the existing vegetated area, and I think that that's what's happening. As far as I understand, there are pavers that are, I mean, there are curbs that are, quote, removed and then reset. And so I wanted clarification on what was going on there. For what, so are you actually making curb cuts so that the water can flow into the garden? Because you have a limit of curbing to be removed and reset designation.
What sheet are you on, Elizabeth? Just so I can
C2.
follow you.
No, Elizabeth, my understanding is that there is no curb cuts or depressions, if you will, that will allow the water to run from the parking to that vegetated area along the sidewalk, if that's what you're asking. What they're proposing to put there is 2 catch basins with a cistern to catch all that water.
Okay, so that was, okay, so that's going to catch, I don't know, a good deal of that water then?
Absolutely, and that's
Okay.
actually one of the questions I have is I think we need some more detail on that.
Okay.
As far as, you know, are there going to be overflows on it? You know, when you get a lot of rain, that
Sure.
cistern obviously has a certain volume.
Okay.
And how you're going to get the water out of the cistern, that type of thing. But the intent is to catch as much of that water as possible in that cistern.
Okay, because also there are proposed parking spaces that are going to be pushed right there next to the lamprey.
Yep.
So that's another reason why I think it's important to. Is there an issue, Diane?
No, that we've hired an engineer to review the plans, and Underwood Engineers has raised the same question about the drainage. And
Well, I'm
he states
specifically talking about-
that the cistern and the drainage connections have not been designed, and he'd like to see some notes added to the plans, which will also provide some detailed construction, engineering details, that an operation maintenance plan be submitted to the town for approval.
Okay.
So I think your comment is a good comment, and I think it's already being taken care of as part of the engineering review process, and the TRC is aware of it. And before it's recommended for final approval, we'll make sure that those notes have been added to the plan.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the developer's effort to address this. I think we all agree it's important and is the most we can possibly do for that. I had just another couple of small things, but I don't want to, does anyone else have some questions?
No, ask your questions.
Sure.
But we're not deliberating, just, as far as if you have questions,
Yeah,
let's get
I
the
have-
questions asked.
Well, I was
Okay.
going to ask the developer.
Yeah, either one.
Sure. In terms of, basically, the elm, I would, more than just, a snow fence around the trunk, really, if the elm really needs to be protected so that you go out to the end of the canopy. So really no construction should move below the canopy of the elm, because otherwise you compact the soil and could kill the elm. So more than just the trunk, the protection has to go to the exterior canopy of the elm. So that's an important, especially important change, because that is a significant tree that you're touting as part of your historic effort. So you have to do more than what you're suggesting. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, there is work that will have to be done in that area.
Well, you have a very good chance of killing the elm if you drive a truck under it.
Yeah, there
So-
won't be any trucks that'll access that area.
It should be, it requires diligence on site to protect a tree. Just the nature of construction is that most often, even if protective devices are set up at the beginning of a construction period, by the end, between, in the harem scarum of it all, a minimal protective device often is less than nothing. So I just suggest that you work to bolster that tree protection effort.
Okay.
So those are my specific interests, and I also just, as a matter of course, you can't on the scheduled plantings. Are you planting another American elm tree?
Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially.
All right.
It depends on the diagnosis that we get back on this tree and whether or not we can save it.
Oh, you're thinking of taking it down?
It would only be taken down if it's already got the Dutch elm disease and it's beyond, it's not treatable. So we're waiting to hear back from our arborist who sampled the tree for the disease.
But you couldn't let it stay, even if it had the disease? I mean, it's been there all these years. It would be a shame to
That's
prematurely end its...
That's our intent, to keep it.
Even if it's diseased, it doesn't have to be completely disease-free.
Right, it depends on what stage it's at, and,
Okay.
we're hopeful,
Draw
based on the-
analogies with all of us.
But if part of the tree falls, it falls.
Sure, no, I
Right.
understand,
And
but
injures a pedestrian,
but there
he's
is such a thing
responsible.
as
But they do have
managing
here that
the
they're all
Yeah.
taken care of.
But
Okay. Thank you.
Are you going to, and, sorry, I didn't mean to, I don't mean to cut
That's
off.
it.
Do you want this to go back to the TRC, or are you looking to move this forward tonight with conditions?
I would like to see it go back to TRC,
Okay.
only because there's some things here that I think is a great site plan, and I'm not trying to make this more painful than it needs to be. I have 3 issues that I think are substantial enough that we need some answers to before I feel comfortable, for safety reasons. And I'll just throw them out at you. There's a...
Can I close off
Yeah.
one sec? Are you agreeable to that, Tim, or are you looking for a decision up or down tonight?
No, I'm not expecting a decision.
So
I don't
you'd be
think it's
fine with
inevitable.
us continuing the meeting? Because we're at the point where I think your time period is tomorrow or the next day?
Today.
It's today.
Today, okay.
Yeah,
Because
so...
those are our only options.
Right, clearly if it's,
If the board feels
it wouldn't be approved tonight, then
you
we
don't
would
move
be
forward.
agreeable.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And just to clarify one thing too, when I say go back to the TRC, from my perspective, there's 3 distinct issues that I think we need to get answers to. And I think we should restrict the TRC to these issues that come up, so we don't just keep opening up a can of worms.
Right.
From my perspective, the first one is in the parking lot at the old building, there's a handicap parking spot, which is fine. I'm just not so sure that that's handicap accessible. I don't see how they get into the building. I don't see a wheelchair ramp anywhere. I see what I think is a grade change, so I'm not so sure that is technically handicap accessible. Not a big deal, I just think it needs to be looked at.
Yeah, it is accessible.
They can get into the building without
Yeah.
stepping up? Okay, that's not
There
clear.
might be a short ramp, but it's only about an 8-inch rise.
Okay, that's fine.
Is it on the same level, Tim, as the parking?
Yes.
It's not the side entrance. At one point, you were talking about directing traffic from the back to the side entrance.
No,
And then we also talked about the steep
Right.
grade on the
Right.
back.
The
and
plans don't
whether that
show
was
any ramp,
feasible.
so that's, I guess that's why
So
I
we can get
had
some
that discussion.
detail on
That's-
that.
Right,
Right.
which isn't the end of the world. The cistern, I think, is a great idea. You have 2 catch basins going into the cistern. There doesn't appear to be any overflow mechanism. What happens if it's already full and you get rain? If they can't overflow, it's just gonna flood the parking lot. Again, not a big idea, it needs to be thought of. And if you're gonna use that for watering, how are you gonna do that?
Right.
Again, not the end of the world, it's just, I think it's a safety thing if the parking lot floods and people can't get through it, or, if there's a big puddle there.
But just to make a comment
Yeah.
on drainage overall, we're not, and we don't necessarily agree with the fact that we're not subject to any stormwater regulations or standards,
Right.
but we're not.
No, you're not subject to the requirement that you prepare a detailed stormwater management plan, but that doesn't mean that we overlook any drainage as part of our review. We have a responsibility under our site review regulations to look at drainage.
Yeah,
Drainage,
and
but
to
not
me-
stormwater quality.
No, and I'm not
Sure,
talking about
okay.
quality at all. I'm
You're
talking
talking about
about
law.
safety. If you had
You're
nothing
talking
there, I'd
about-
be happy with that. That wouldn't bother me at all. But you have catch basins there that, and a cistern looks like it's gonna fill up and overflow. And you need to address that. If you just didn't have those there and said the water was gonna run off and into the river, you're still better than what's there. So
Right.
I think you're
If
proposing
it was-
something, we just need to make sure it's not gonna be a problem. That's all.
If it reaches capacity, then water just doesn't go into the catch basins. It flows like it does now. There's no change.
The grading's a little bit different though, right?
No, not in that area.
Okay, okay. The other thing is something that I think was new to the plan, which is, again, I think it's a great addition, there's no detail on it though, is you talk about a wind turbine. And it says a 25-foot pole, but there's no details on what the turbine is. Is it a helical turbine, is it a, what is it?
It's a vertical wind air turbine, which it does state on there, and there
Yeah,
are-
but there's no details of that.
Right.
Can you provide us with some
That's all. I mean, it's not-
specifications so we can see what it looks like?
Right.
Right.
And then you have the issue for the fire department and the issue with the
Survey.
well, the survey is still an outstanding issue.
At some point, that's going to need to be
Yeah.
addressed on the plan.
I would, can I make a suggestion on the survey? There are no bearings or distances on this lot, and what I would suggest is what I would recommend is just put proposed, estimated lot size, because you don't know what it's gonna be until you get an agreement with the town. So whatever you have depicted as a lot size now, just put estimated lot size.
You'd have to ask for a waiver, though, from our regulations for that,
For,
because a boundary survey is required in the regulation.
well, he will have a boundary survey.
Okay.
It will be, he has a boundary survey, but it's estimated because they don't know exactly what the final agreement is gonna be with the town. So he can show a proposed lot size,
Mm-hmm.
say an estimated proposed lot size, and if that, I think we can word our approval, or if there is an approval, we can word it such that if that changes, they don't have to come back and get it. If it changes, it would change by a matter of square feet or 100 square feet, and it's, in my opinion, an insignificant amount.
And are we only referring to the boundary along Water Street?
No, there's no boundary detail on the whole thing.
That's my issue.
Yes, which we need to get that information, but I know they have that information. It's,
Well, unless the applicant is asking for a waiver from that, that was the point of my question. There are lots of things in our site plan review regulations that aren't addressed, but yet we don't have any requests for waivers.
But I think, isn't there a property line here?
I can't hear that.
Isn't there a what?
Isn't there a property line, I guess?
It shows a property line, but it doesn't have any
There's no meets
distances
and
or bearings
bounds
or
and-
meets or bounds, right?
Bearings.
Right.
So those are the three items, plus we had the engineer in the, so again, if we were to approve this tonight or move it forward with approval with conditions, we would have to incorporate those into the conditions, if we were not going to continue the hearing.
Can I add one more thing? In the discussions at the TRC, I think Rob from Rivermore Landing had some issues about lighting or blocking of lighting into their parking garage. My personal opinion is that it's not this developer's responsibility to address lighting in the parking garage. Rob disagreed with that. To be fair to them, certainly that's not my decision to make as an individual. That's my personal opinion. So I'd like to hear from.
We'll open up to public
Okay,
comments.
okay. I'm all set then.
Okay, so before I ask some questions, are there any other board questions to the applicant or for TRC?
Well, it just, for me, how the map is distinguished, how the plan is distinguishing the existing from the proposed contours it's just difficult at this scale and this resolution for me to see a clear difference between the two, so.
There are
There are
full-size
some-
drawings that we
yeah.
submitted.
Again,
These
Elizabeth,
drawings, but-
the engineer,
Oh,
that was
okay.
another one of the engineer's concern, that he says the contours should be fixed and spot elevations should be provided there is concern about how the drainage from the parking area flows with respect to the Riverwalk. And I think, our goal is to get all of those things addressed as part of the technical.
Okay, because I would appreciate that, because in terms of convention, proposed contour lines are usually very clearly distinct from existing. They're solid, and you have dashed for both, so at this scale, it's
Actually,
very
they are
difficult for me
solid.
to hear.
If you look at
They are solid?
C4 shows the contour.
C4, and all the, on drawing C3, all the drainage patterns
Grading
are
legend.
identified with the
Oh,
arrows.
I see them there, but they're dashed lines. Oh, and then finished grade, you have existing.
It's a very
okay,
flat
finished,
site.
Okay, okay, I see.
Because
All
these
right,
are
thank
2-foot
you.
contours, correct?
Okay, yeah.
2-foot contours.
All right,
Right,
so,
which means the
sorry,
regulation.
I didn't, okay.
Elizabeth, there
Yeah.
are, and I guess for everybody else, there are full-size plan sets up in Diane's
Right,
office.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We can make a set
Thank
available
you.
to you.
No,
Lisa,
no,
if
no,
you'd
I've
like.
got a full size here. Thank you.
Okay.
You do need to see the full size to see everything well. You do need the full size stuff.
Thank you. All right.
Any other questions?
I'm
Right.
sorry, just one, to elaborate maybe more on Elizabeth's concern regarding the tree. Is there any way we can get some documentation on the arborist's recommendation to help preserve the tree during construction?
Yeah. Will there be a report? You've talked about the arborist report, but we haven't seen anything yet. Is that something
No
you can make?
report. He's sampled the
Test.
tree, cored the tree, and they're testing it for Dutch elm disease.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure Underwood Engineers knows how to protect the tree, but if not, you can consult with the arborist. But putting it around the trunk that's not sufficient. It has to protect the width of the canopy. That's where the roots are, most of the roots are, so you can't really go in there unless you really need to, I guess. But if we're talking about an historic tree, I think it might be worth revisiting what you're doing underneath the tree.
We're just landscaping underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
We're adding shrubs
Okay,
and
but just in
ground
terms
cover.
of what vehicles are allowed to move under there, not to beat a dead horse, but this.
Yeah, no,
not
just,
big,
I mean, just if it is a historical tree, if there's any way we can just document the policy to preserve the tree. Forget the Dutch elm things, I mean, if it has it, and whatever the arborist recommends, but if there's a policy, a documented policy to preserve it, that's all.
Yeah, I don't believe there's anything in the
In our regs.
ordinances or
But I think he
regulations.
contacts the state. They do have
Yeah,
some
the
information.
state Department of Resources and
We have-
Economic Development, they have a urban forester. Her name is Mary Reynolds.
Yeah.
And she's very knowledgeable about tree materials, and she could probably give
We
you some
actually
guidance
we
on how
did
to protect
contact
it.
them, and they referred us to an arborist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's who we contacted.
Okay. I think, can we get a copy of your test results from the arborist as
Sure.
part of our
Yeah.
review?
Yeah, I haven't got them yet. I don't even know if they've sampled it yet, but they were waiting until winter came in.
Eric?
Thank you.
I guess to just kind of put this to rest, I assume that when your arborist samples it, he's gonna write you a letter that says the elm tree does not have Dutch elm disease, it's fine, or it does, or, is that correct? So I think all we need is a copy of that, whatever letter you get from that person, which I'm sure would have some recommendations in it. If it's gonna be preserved, you'd probably make some recommendations as to how to best do that.
Mhm.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that could be a condition of approval, that would be pretty straightforward. But to be clear for everybody though, there's a retaining wall that's gonna be built, and there's sidewalk along Water Street that,
It's going to impact.
are more than likely gonna impact the roots of that tree. There's no two ways around it,
Right.
So, I think it's a valiant attempt to try to save it, and I know you're gonna try to do everything you can, but, at the end of the day, even with the best laid plans, it may
Yeah.
not make it.
And no requirement under our regulations.
Right.
So that could not be a condition of approval.
That you have to save the elm tree?
No, I wouldn't make that a condition of approval. I'd make a condition of approval that we get the report from you.
Right.
We want to
You
make
could-
sure we're doing our due diligence relative to what you're presenting. And I think one of the things that you have been presenting is your efforts to save a tree that is obviously as high importance.
Right.
Not just to you, but obviously to the community.
Right.
So we appreciate that. So relative to, I'm still back on waiver, you've requested a waiver for the hydric soils.
Oh, yes, we did, at
Okay.
the TRC.
So if we could make sure that that's in writing with the, justification, so we can act on that. I don't want any loose ends when we move forward on application approval.
I wasn't aware you need that, but, okay.
Yeah, any of the items under C or under site plan that are required to be on the plan that you want waived, we need that as a written
Okay.
request for waiver. And the TRC doesn't have jurisdiction over it. It's the
Okay.
planning board would vote on that.
All right.
Okay.
Is this something that they put their waiver request on the plans, or as a separate?
No, separate.
It's usually
It's so it doesn't have to be on the plan.
Right, okay.
And that would be the same issue if there are issues relative to the boundary survey.
Right.
And the setbacks that
setbacks.
correspond to the boundary survey. And I
Yes.
think that's why the question was raised in the first place.
So then my only, I'll bring it up under deliberation, okay. So I think, are we good with questions for now? I'd like to open up to the public. Is anyone here from the public that would like to speak for or against this application, or may have any specific questions for the board or the applicant? I would open that up now. And if you'd take your name and your address, please, for the record.
Rob Phillips, Rivermore Landing Condominium Association. A question first, are we continuing and are we going to a TRC?
That
We
hasn't.
want to hear
yeah,
from
been
the public
determined.
first, and then the board will discuss that.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is Eric has said that he wants to do a TRC, but only with 3 items on it. So my question for the board is the TRC going to be limited to 3 items, or will it be a discussion of what the technical review committee normally takes up?
I think Eric had 3 items, and then we
They-
expanded the list, so
Right.
I've got
Yeah.
7.
If I may, there are outstanding items that our TRC representative isn't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
There are outstanding items that the town engineer has brought up, and then also the fire chief.
Right,
So those would be outstanding items that the planning board would have to deal with.
okay.
Um,
The reason I ask is, at the last TRC, we discussed more than just one item related to Rivermore Landing. So, as I had emailed Diane at the beginning of December, and as Tim and I have continued to discuss and reach an accord about, there are 5 items that we would like the TRC to take up. 4 of them were discussed at that time, and I'll go through them briefly. The reason I ask about it is if there is going to be a TRC, this is where I think these should be taken up, and I just want to make sure we'll get the chance to revisit them again, particularly in light of the fact that Tim and I have reached amicable agreement about each one of them. So the 5 items are that we would like to have permanent marked boundaries. That is, we would like to have each place the line changes, we'd like to have something put in the ground that's permanent. And if you were to visit the site right now, you'd see why. There's a whole bunch of stuff that has been built onto abutting properties by other people. So if we get permanent markers there, it'll help clarify the issue, particularly where everything is so close and tight together. We need to discuss the travel lane that goes from Tim's property onto our property. Rick has a problem. He has to make sure that he can get by onto Rivermore over to Chimberg's property. And one of the things that didn't get documented, but Tim and I have discussed it, and we are in agreement, is it is tight there. It's so tight that if, in fact, someone parked a van and they didn't pull over to the river as far as it could go, Rick could find himself in a position of not being able to pass by. He has that issue right now as he comes down our Central Drive. So once again, keeping in mind that we are in agreement on this, we just want to point out to the Technical Review Committee, propose a solution, and then have it become part of the documents going forward. Eric did mention the issues with visibility and lighting as it relates to the garage. once again, Tim and I have discussed how to get around that, so we'd like to discuss that with the TRC. There are a couple of existing trees that may or may not survive. Once again, we've reached an accord about, we'll wait to see how the construction proceeds. We'll look to see how much trimming has to be done, whether they benefit the property, don't benefit the property. But the common approach there is, if we decide that they don't stay, then they just get replicated elsewhere on the property. So we're talking about if a couple of trees can live and survive and make sense where they are, fine. If they can't, we just get a replication someplace else on our property of those trees that get taken down. Once again, Tim is fine with that. And the last item is along the garage, between the newly constructed building and the garage. The concern is that access by both properties is going to be needed sometime in the future for goodness knows what. So if you could imagine, you need to pay attention to the back of the new building. You need to do re-siding or something. You not only have to get scaffolding in there, but you might have to get a jitney with a lift in there. So also for safety, if someone had to exit the garage, couldn't exit through the entrance they drive in, if they had to, in an emergency, leave the garage, we want to make sure that the area between the garage and the newly constructed building is, by fiat, including condo docks, left undeveloped, not built up. Plantings will be fine, but as you can imagine, you can't start growing a whole bunch of trees, you can't start erecting whatever out back, and then all of a sudden find out that people need access back, either through emergency or just for repairs. So as I say, the applicant's fine with all of these. We just want to discuss it with the TRC and then have it follow the plans back to the planning board. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions from the public?
Hi, Skip Manso. I live on Kimball Way, and here representing the Newmarket Community Church as a member and as their representative for the trustees. And I really don't have any other comments to bring forward since the last meeting. We've had a few issues that we've been able to resolve with the applicant, and made a few accommodations on both sides of the fence as it would be, and we feel that to move forward and have an approval of this site plan and the redevelopment of this property would be in the best interest of the town and of the church as a direct abutter. So we have no issues with the plan as it's presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions before I close the public hearing? Okay, public hearing is now closed. Deliberations by the board. I have one question relative to the zoning, the variance. In dealing, the variance was to a setback to a property line.
Yes.
And
And also density
and plus the
requirements.
density for the use. Do we have the notice of decision of that at the planning office?
We certainly do have the notice
Okay.
of decision. I can make that
All right.
available to
And-
board members electronically tomorrow if you'd like me to.
That, I think just to have that on file, and a letter, which is probably from you, right, code administrator?
The denial on
No,
it?
no, the letter stating that the variance, that the setback is shown on the plan is consistent with the variance granted.
Well, I think that's a TRC matter, and I could provide
That would be great. I want to make sure that we have something in file that when we're signing off on the site plan, that we have something backing up that the dimensional control, the relief from the dimensional control, that there's something in the file to protect both the board and the applicant. with that regard.
I
Can I ask Tim a question?
The letter together.
That'd be great, thanks. Go ahead.
Tim,
Yep, Ed.
you came before the council before and you're looking for some monies, and we gave you some monies, right? And you were gonna, for that right away on Water Street? Was that an easement? Refresh my memory.
No.
Remember, yeah, the survey, the original survey from the old town, they were wrong, and when Doucette did the survey, and the part of it was still on,
Yeah, there's a historic right-of-way which got lost. In a 1972 survey, I believe it was 1972, that right-of-way disappeared from the property boundary survey that was completed by a PLS. So the subsequent surveys, I think there were 2 subsequent surveys, never identified that ROW. When we did our survey, Doucette apparently dug a little bit deeper than the previous surveyors and found that historical right-of-way existed, had never been absolved by the town.
so that'll have to be in the records, right?
That's part
That's part of this whole boundary.
He's showing that part of his boundary, and I
Okay.
think the
Okay.
intent is that the town was going to sell you,
Deed over.
deed you that
Is
right
that
of
an
way.
easement or?
It's not deed, it's a right-of-way, it's not
Okay.
a
Oh, okay.
property
Okay.
transition.
Easement.
It's
So
a
it's an
right-of-way.
easement. Okay.
I can remember it was last fall or something you came in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the formal survey and recording to remove the right-of-way is still pending.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, personally, my position on this would be that I would defer to Eric and I would, and Diane, that I would rather have less conditions on the approval and, take some of these gray items off the table, before we move it, before the plan is approved. I think it's a great plan, obviously it's huge, project for the town and huge improvement to that site. So I think that's fabulous. But I do have some of the concerns are also voiced here by the public and, this whole issue of, cross easements on that boundary line for, access and maintenance. We have had too many projects that have been built in Newmarket that the I's and T's weren't dotted, and we suffer the consequences of them many, many years later. So it's best that we can try to stop that, both from the applicant's point of view, the abutters' point of view, and this board's point of view. I think the better off everybody is in the long run. So with that, based upon that, I would like to see us continue this hearing if that is, if the board would concurs with that and if that is acceptable to the applicant. Mr. Nichols?
I'm in agreement or I am agreeable to that.
Thank you. Eric?
Make a motion to continue until, when's our next meeting?
February 12th.
February 12th?
And if we want plans prior to one day before our meeting, that date or that time or date needs to be specified in the motion.
Okay, I further
If we
that-
want updated plans, if that,
Right,
which we
so further that any plan revisions be submitted at least a week prior to that meeting.
okay.
Hopefully we'll have a TRC meeting, be able to resolve everything, that have a week or two to get the plans in, and then everybody can give them one last look over, and we'll be good to go.
Well, it's the 22nd now, and our meeting is the 12th.
3
So we have
weeks.
3 weeks from here.
So we have 2 weeks to resolve everything.
TRC next week, and
I'd like to schedule it
Plans
for
the
next
week
week,
after.
and I think
So does that
everyone's-
work for you, Mr. Nichols, that we could have updated plans at least 5 business days before the meeting?
Yes, we did submit them electronically a week before, but the hard
Yeah, but
copies.
you're supposed to, and you did, you submitted the number of copies of the 11 by 17 and one day before, which is our policy, but it's really difficult for for us to pick them up. And it's not your fault, that's an issue on our end. But and the regulation is, if we want them prior to 1 day before, it needs to be in the motion, and that's why I had.
I'm not so sure the plans are gonna have to change very much at all. I think there's a lot of
We're just adding a few notes, I think.
language,
Okay.
right.
Mr. Mansky.
Yeah, so we'll have them to you sooner,
1 week before.
at least 1 week.
At least 1 week
Okay.
before,
Yes.
in hard copy as well as electronic.
And I just
Yes.
have a couple of questions about the grading plan, which maybe I can catch Eric for 2 minutes before the end, and then he can pass
Okay.
on to you.
Yep.
Now that I can see things work.
Do you have a question about the motion, or a comment?
Well,
I've closed public hearing, but,
as representing an abutter on Water Street, it seems to me that, I think what was said a little bit earlier was that Diane was gonna address the issue of going way back to the council on trying to resolve this Water Street right-of-way.
Well, I'm gonna try to get a
The town-
report.
Phil Doucette hasn't done anything because he's not gotten any purchase order from the town authorizing him to move ahead.
so
how
that
can-
may, it may be a condition of
yeah, how
approval.
can this whole issue be
Okay.
resolved about the lot size? And, you know, we were part of that public
Okay.
hearing too, and I speak
Yep.
as a member of the church. We were right here in this room.
Yeah.
That's a
And
good
that was
point.
a year ago.
No, that's a point well taken. Either something is being waived, a waiver's granted for that, or it's a condition of approval.
Yeah, we want to cross the Ts and dot the Is. It goes
Right.
back to the council, almost a year ago.
Let's,
Jerry,
let's
I
vote,
think I can add to that.
oh, let's vote on the motion before us,
Okay, yeah.
okay? And I,
I'm sorry.
was there a second to the motion?
Second.
Continuation till the February
22nd.
20,
No.
no, February
February
12th,
I'm sorry.
with materials to be, any new materials to be submitted by the applicant.
1 week in
1 week
Before the end
prior.
of business on the 5th.
Okay, that's the motion.
Second.
Second by Rick. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. This is continued to the 12th. Okay. I'll just reopen public comments, because Jerry, you had a comment, and we're kind of nice and formal group here tonight.
Jerry O'Connell, 26 Grant Road. I've been involved in this all the way along as the broker for the seller. Last year, as Ed mentioned, the town council, well, let me take a step back. There is a historical, on the survey that Bill Doucette did for Tim, there's a historical right-of-way that was discovered. That was not discovered on the previous approvals that Servage had done himself and a previous plan. So he found a historical right-of-way on Water Street that cut across all the properties going down. So the property line of 13 Water Street itself are not in question. It's the right-of-way and where the meets and bounds of the right-of-way are within the 13 Water Street property. The town council voted to they voted that they would, that they made the decision to take away that right-of-way and to quash it and take it off all the 5 properties. And they also made a decision to put so much of the money in to pay for part of that, and Tim was paying the rest of it.
To extinguish the right-of-way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So Bill Doucette is waiting for their purchase order. Once he gets that, Tim can give him the go-ahead. He can go and do the meets and bounds on that right-of-way, present it to the town, have it signed off, and the right-of-way is gone. But the right-of-way is not a property line. I just want, there's always been confusion about that. Property lines on 13 Water Street are not in question, so the setbacks shouldn't be, well, the setbacks are setbacks, but they're not going to change, I don't believe.
But
So
presumably, the right-of-way extends closer to the building beyond the
it
property line.
does, yes. And there is, and it's on file, a map that was produced from the survey by Bill Doucette, which I'm not sure was actually recorded, but he presented it to Tim, and it shows the right-of-way line. And what he has to do is to present to the town an official survey that shows where the meets and bounds are, and telling them what it is they're taking away. And then they basically sign, once they have that, they sign it off, and it's done. And that right-of-way is gone from all 5 properties. The 5 properties being the church, 13 Water Street, the Costas building, the next building down, and the town's parking lot.
Right.
So those are the 5. And then it's not, the property lines aren't in question, it's just when that right-of-way is surveyed properly with its meets and bounds, it gets presented to the town council for the decision they've already made to take it away. And all they have to do is do a purchase order, and Tim can do his part, and it can be done.
But just so you understand, with relative to our regulations and approval for site plan, one of the requirements is a boundary survey, which would show any rights of ways or easements of record.
Right.
And so we can't approve it unless that is waived.
No, I know. I'm just
Okay.
pointing out that
Okay.
that's exactly
So
what
that- I
is
just want
being
you to
waived. There's some
understand
confusion about what
you're
it is
aware.
that's being waived, or if there's still waivers needed, but
But
there isn't. Thank you.
do we have to waive the right-of-ways for everyone? Because,
We have nothing to do with that.
No.
I
We
mean, but does
simply-
that have to be
The town
up for
council have already
discussion?
decided
That
to do
hasn't-
that.
For
It's not-
everybody, that's
Yes.
unfortunate.
That's
Yes.
not the planning board's purview.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
deal with rights of ways.
The town council's
Yeah.
already
Because
decided to
that's
do it.
opportunity lost in terms of stormwater management.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Phillips.
So if I might, my favorite request, since Rick's here, Eric's here, I forget whether you're also on the TRC.
No.
You're invited to join us, but would
Cocktails
you,
or something.
would you mind working out a date and time while we're here? The last time we went into the TRC,
We need input from the town engineer, the public works director,
Okay.
all the different
so
players.
I'll do as
They're
I
not
always
all
do.
here.
I'll stand at ease and hope that it's next week so that then Tim can turn everything into media and get it to you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and again, Mr. Phillips, your comments obviously are going to be taken into
Oh,
consideration
yes,
by
no,
the board.
and I'll be there anyway, so that
Okay.
Eric and I can continue our dialogue, but thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is new and old business. On the chairman's report, I just want to report that I have drafted, with the help of Diane, the annual report for the planning board to the residents of the town of Newmarket, so that's been done. And I understand, Ed, that we're going to have a combined report this year with the school,
Yes.
so that's great. Taxpayers like that savings of money. Diane and I appeared before the town council meeting last week to give a presentation, which was really a re-presentation of last year's impact fee, the recommendations from the planning board to the town council that we delivered a year ago, December 2011. I updated the presentation and presented that on Wednesday night, and then we also presented the overview of the planning board's request for the town council to adopt the amendments that the planning board recommended with regards to the zoning ordinance. So that was also presented, and we'll be following up with some additional items that some of the town councilors requested, and I have requested to be on their next meeting with this as an agenda item, so we can try to move this forward. And then again, on the chairman's report will be alluded to tonight. I think at this point, we really need a couple people, if any, we can get some volunteers to really go through our regulations again and kind of look at the policies that we have, and maybe get those updated. I mean, case in point, it really is the applicant has one day to get at this. And I don't know about you all, but if I got this yesterday, even if it wasn't a holiday, I would not have had time to look at it. So that's a burden on the planning office. And I think by having more time, it will provide the board members more opportunity to do our due diligence and to be better prepared for the meetings. Fortunately, which was a big change that was instituted, and the planning office, I think, has been diligent about this, is the requirement for the applicant to submit the plans. It used to be Sue would make all these copies for us, so that has stopped. But I think there's some little loose ends in some of our policies and our regulations that we should look at. So if people can think about maybe wanting to help with that, and get back to me on it, I'd appreciate it. It'd be just a little subcommittee. And that's all I have. Committee reports. Ed, how do we do with the council?
We did real well. You explained everything and just happened to me. You were the show. You and Diane both the presentation. I thought you did a fabulous job with your presentation there. And we'll probably take another presentation, maybe two, to win some counselors over. They had a lot of questions for you, but I think you really handled it real well and answered them very professionally. But you and Diane were the show on the impact fees and zoning. That was our meeting.
Any other town council items that the planning board needs to be aware of, or anything that we're going to be getting involved with at some point?
Off the top of my head.
Okay, great, thank you. Jane, do we have you on a committee?
No.
Well, we're gonna take care of that. Stay tuned.
No, but just regarding your regulations review, I'd be happy to do it. I think it would be good for me.
That'd be great.
As part of doing that, but I guess I would need a coach kind of to sit down and say, that's a good idea, but that's not how we do things, you know, that kind of thing. So if anyone else is interested, I'd be more than happy to do that.
That'd be great, thank you, appreciate it. Landscape regulations. How are we
Look
on
to
that?
Diane.
Okay, maybe February?
February, and I have started making some changes based on the discussions that Elizabeth and I have had.
I don't mean, I'm just saying she has the latest.
Okay.
And I'm meeting with Cynthia
We
Copeland
discussed it.
on Friday
Diana.
to go over her comments.
Okay.
Hopefully, between the three of us, we can pull together another draft and we can have something for the February meeting.
Okay, let's put that as an agenda item on the February meeting. Good?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. Advisory heritage?
No news.
No, haven't met, okay.
Conservation,
Conservation.
they have been doing, just for your information, an upgrade of the prime wetlands map.
Oh,
And they've been
great.
doing it, Jeff Goldnall?
Yeah,
Go.
do so-
I
are you
just-
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Jeff, right, who's
Yeah,
on the committee,
yeah.
has taken it by the horn. And there's gonna be a color map, we got black and white, he got colored. But on their maps, what they're going to, they're discussing to do is also showing the buffers
Mm-hmm.
on those maps, so people have a better idea where they can and cannot build. And that was an idea that's coming forward.
Okay.
And
That's
they
a good
are
idea.
finishing that up, and I just wanted to pass along that and then, of course, a copy is gonna go to Diane's, to the planning office to have on file.
And
Okay.
we'd like to have that electronic copy so we can put it on our
Yeah.
website as well.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So I just
Excellent.
want to let you know they're working on that. And then, of course, then they do their regular stuff, like the easement monitoring and stuff.
Yeah.
But this is what,
For the planning
for the
board.
planning board, this is what
Okay.
I thought you really would like to know about.
There was a change in the RSA last year on prime wetlands. Did they discuss that?
He's been dealing with the state.
Okay, great,
He's right on
great.
top notch. I mean, he's an engineer and has all those connections. And with the man who did the original wetlands,
Mhm.
Mark
Mark
West.
he's been in touch with him too.
Good.
So he's has a really good job, and with the Falksbrook area in there.
Great.
So I just want to let you know that will be coming to
Okay.
you, and that has been being done. And how soon, I have a question for you, Val. 2 questions. Either now or later. It's not a committee report.
Go ahead. Well, let's get through the committee
Okay.
reports. Economic Development Committee, I'll report on that. We have had one meeting. There's still an at-large position that the council is looking to fill. Gary Levy is the chair. Jerry O'Connell's the vice chair. So we had an organizational meeting, and we'll be meeting again in February. So hopefully I'll have more to report on that. Rick? CIP's done, right?
CIP is all done, put to bed.
For now.
Just waiting to be voted on.
Okay.
I have nothing.
'Cause you
And
need
if
a
you want me, I'll
committee,
still
too.
stay on the.
You are a
He's-
committee,
he is a committee.
TRC.
He already
Yes.
did his work.
I'll stay on the TRC.
And the
Okay.
dam committee, actually.
Yes. I'm sorry.
The dam study committee.
That, damn, I'm like, the damn what?
The dam removal study committee is getting
And what's the
reached.
planning board have to do with that?
Nothing.
Good. Diane, do you have any
Just real
planning board
quickly,
issues?
we still have a vacancy, an opening for someone to serve on the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. Roseanne Kwok's term expired in September, so we're looking for volunteers to serve in that capacity. Also, we have a planning board alternate position open.
Yes.
And I'd like to just get the word out to the public, and if anyone is interested in joining us and submitting an application under that, we'd be more than happy to put on the agenda for the next meeting.
And that's a position that expires the end of March of this year. Is that correct?
I'd have to go back and look at
I
that.
saw that. And there's a couple expiring positions that, on the planning board, who I can't remember whose terms are up.
Mine is
Mine,
It's
Okay.
2014.
And
Mine would
Adams.
be up to.
Okay. Well,
You get
you'll be
reappointed, yeah.
reappointed. Well,
And the
Well,
position that.
There will be.
Be a
somebody from the
reappointment.
council.
okay. So,
Adams' position.
all right. So, I mean, just for, we would hope that you would, reapply. And there, do you know what the time is on that, Ed? I mean,
It's
that
when we have
application
the,
is open.
Yeah, it's the March 18th meeting.
Yeah, but
I
as
think.
far as the application
I think you
period,
can begin
It
January
starts tomorrow.
23rd.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
So the first, is it?
I'm for the trustee of the trust funds, and I was in there
Okay.
today for pick
What's
up
it,
the
like 8
papers.
days, 9 days?
all right. So just be aware of that. If your term is expiring, there's a window that you need to reapply in to be back on the
I
ballot.
think it's the 23rd to the
Okay.
27th or something like that, 29th.
Eric?
One thing that you touched on was the impact fees.
Mhm.
And I'll just throw this out there for, I guess, the people at home and planning board members. If you go to the Derry News website, Londonderry is going through a significant battle with their impact fees.
Yes, we
Very
have it.
similar to Newmarket.
Mhm.
And,
Well, not yet.
well, soon to be probably. The courts aren't being very friendly to Londonderry, and they identified their problem themselves like we have, so. Just some interesting reading for those interested in the impact fees.
There was an
Somebody
article in
resign
the
over
Union,
there?
Hmm?
Town manager resigned or something, didn't he, over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
there was an article in the Union Leader last week, and I can
We
circulate that to the
provided
planning
that
board
to the
members.
council.
And a
So-
copy of it was provided to the
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other new or old business?
I have a
Yes,
couple
go.
questions. How soon did you want the regulations looked at?
I'd say that's a nice kind of 3 to 6 month project.
Okay, I'll be interested in working on that too.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And of course, I'm more than happy to work with
Yeah.
you
Oh,
and
yeah.
help you with that
Yeah.
process.
And, okay, well, good luck in the reelection.
Oh, I didn't say I was gonna.
Always be an alternate.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, I am interested in helping
Okay.
out with Diane and Jane.
Good luck with you.
Now I forgot what I was gonna, I want to ask him a question.
Sure.
Ed?
Yes.
Because I watched that meeting with Diane and Val,
Yeah.
did their presentations.
Yes.
And one of your town councilors, I believe it was Levy, mentioned, it was Levy, mentioned that a moratorium on building a Newmarket, he thought there was coming down the
No,
pipe.
No, we have
that's
no
related to
moratorium.
the water
Okay. I haven't
system.
heard anything.
Okay, so it wasn't
And-
anything on
and
building, okay, I just wanted to clear that up.
There
so
is not
I'm
a
sure other
building
people heard it.
moratorium, there is a threat of a building
Yeah.
moratorium on any water connections if the town didn't take action
So there was a
to
threat on any water
resolve some of their
connections.
issues, and the town
Which
council
does
is
in a way
working on those issues
affect
right now.
building, if you put a building
Yeah.
out, you have to connect.
Right.
But there, we do have a regulation too on the books that if the town can't provide the amount of water necessary for development, let's say if there was a commercial development that wanted to come in up on the North Main Street end, which is really probably where most of the issue is. I think that regulation applies where the landowner can put in its own well as opposed to connect in.
Okay.
If the town can't provide the adequate water supply, the landowner can provide their own supply. So it's an issue the town needs to address, whether it's for, the existing build-out analysis, or if they really want to move commercial development or large-scale development forward in a commercial manner.
And a little thing, on any planning board members that are gonna be applied that, I think most people know it, but in the past, it has occurred, some people asking to be on committees, and we don't want to embarrass anybody. So you should be a U.S. citizen to apply to the planning board for that position, if you're gonna, to run. Because we had an
It's for
individual
all
who.
town, for all
That's
town.
right.
I just want to make
Yeah.
it known,
That's
because we had
correct.
someone who applied for a committee who could not,
Yeah.
who we could not place on, and I don't want to see any more people in Newmarket embarrassed in any ways like that. That was
Right,
kind
I
of
think
hard.
we can deal with that now.
Yeah, but it's nice to know, because it has happened. Another thing, and you brought it up, that's happened in the past, and it kind of ties in with Rivermore Landing in a way, not a way, but he brought up having permanent markers. And I'm referring to something that we, the planning board, may have to change a policy or put a regulations or put something in to prevent these type of buildings, people building on abutters properties where they shouldn't be. Hate to say names, but it was in our minutes. But I mean, you know, there's a way that I think that can be solved. Behind Riverworks, that building was not
Oh,
put
okay,
properly
yes.
on
Yes.
the lot. Okay, it was encroaching on the other property. There's a way that that can be done so that does not happen again.
Well, you want to look at our site plan review regulations or subdivision.
Okay.
It's in subdivision
Right.
review with permanent markers have to be placed.
Right, but it should be
But you can
certified
look
by an
at our other
engineer.
regulations.
Yeah, that
I
should be.
think Janice brings up a really good
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
on occasion have required certified plot plans if there's a question as to how far something is from a property line, how
Yeah.
far it is to wetland buffer,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
And, I mean, that may-
certainly is something we can incorporate in the new regulations.
Yeah, and you may want to pass that along to the building office. I know we deal with a lot of properties in Durham that, when you're doing any construction activities, the building inspector, the code enforcement officer can require as-built plan, certification plan by a surveyor. So I don't know if we have that regulation
We
here in
haven't
town.
done that in Newmarket, but I know a lot of communities have and have taken that step.
One other thing, Val, I probably should have mentioned it with the committee. It's the signs coming for the walkways. We discussed at the last town council meeting, I brought it up. And Steve Fournier, town administrator, is looking into it. On some of these crosswalks that we have coming down, like up at the mill, it's going to be flashing,
No,
flashing yellow lights
They have those
on
in
the
the-
signs. They have one like at UNH, you know, the crosswalk there. And Dover just put one in up at,
Okay.
on Chestnut Street, and I saw that last night. It looks pretty good. At nighttime and during the day, at least it gets your attention. It's flashing instead of just a sign with a signal pointing down. You know, so Steve
So-
Fournier was looking into that, the cost of it.
Okay, so if he you want to bring this to the council, if the council wants the planning board to revisit our sign ordinance, then we can put that on our agenda,
Okay.
okay?
We're talking about traffic signs.
Yeah, that was a
Okay, we don't have
Yeah,
any
but-
we don't have jurisdiction over signs,
Well,
other than through our site plan
through site plan review, that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Okay.
So like, for instance, when, you know, if there's any more development along 108, as, you know, the applicants have to adhere to our current sign ordinance, it may be time to review that sign ordinance.
But for safety,
Yeah.
we definitely need something up by the mills.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Any other discussion on any items? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.